So last year, the world was rocked when out of the blue, Russia invaded Ukraine. It was a terrible move that should have never happened and is now costing the lives of hundreds of thousands. Almost nobody could have predicted this horrible event, most certainly of which was Nintendo, developer and distributor of Advanced Wars 1 plus 2 Reboot Camp. They were planning on releasing this little game around the same time as the conflict first started, simply trying to release an HD port of a Game Boy Advance game that was innocuous enough. But life can be tricky at times. Because of the horrible, terrible events that had unfurled on the world stage, they pulled the game from its early 2022 release, unknowing if it would ever see the light of day. Well, now we will be seeing it soon, and I gotta be honest, I'm actually looking forward to it, despite the fact that I've never played the original Game Boy Advance game. I owned a GBA and played it as frequently as I could. It's just that game never crossed my radar. I mean, it doesn't help that my parents were the ones buying the games, so they had the ultimate say on which games I would play. Nevertheless, I didn't have the luxury of playing the game for myself, so when it was initially announced, I had no real feelings towards it except, that looks kinda cool. Then the invasion happened, and it was pulled from the Switch's 2022 release timeframe. Even though the game has a cartoony style that doesn't really glamorize violence, it still was depicting acts of war. And because Nintendo wants to avoid any controversy at all costs, Nintendo pulled it, as was the appropriate move. But this move inadvertently got me interested in the game. Was Advanced Wars 1 plus 2 Reboot Camp so graphic in nature that it was worth pulling? Well, no. It only has cartoony levels of violence, and that's mostly towards vehicles, so it's not really too terrible. It's just simply the fact that it depicts war. That's all. That's the only reason Nintendo needed. But this move attracted my attention, and I wanted to see what all the fuss was about. Because I've never played the game, I decided to do a little deep dive. Nevertheless, I wanted to get more info about this game, to dig into it more. Now, it was an interesting tactical shooter that forces you to really plan ahead, to really gauge what your opponent is doing, and to pay attention to what you are doing as well. You don't want to overstep your bounds, otherwise you could just get absolutely owned by the other team. I mean, we've seen this in similar games that have come out this year, but this one just has a different vibe to it, just a different energy, more modern, maybe more relevant, but again, it's not too offensive. It was released during the GBA days, so that was far before they could even predict what was going on in Ukraine right now. So I'll give Nintendo the benefit of the doubt here. It still looks cool. I really am excited to play it. I have a pre-order on it right now, and I'll be excited to see how it plays, and I'll give you guys my impressions of it when the game's actually released, and I actually do a proper review of that. But that's for another time now. I mean, it is a series that they decided to remaster after all. It's just a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad coincidence that this war happened. Don't get me wrong, what happened is a calamity. I'm not at all trying to take anything away from the horrible reality of what's going on in Ukraine. I'm just telling you the truth. Because of the disastrous world events and an untimely coincidence that forced Nintendo's hand, I found myself drawn towards a game that I really didn't have much investment in the first place. All because it was shelved at the right place at the right time. It's stupid, I know, but I have to be honest here. Please don't think at all that I believe this horrible event was good. No. No. It's still a tragedy that nobody could have forecasted, and I wish nothing but peace in the world right now. What I am trying to say here is the fact that Nintendo was forced by no actions but their own to bench this game. Nintendo could have just as easily put their fingers in their ears and go la 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 la, but ultimately when it comes to world events, they cannot ignore it. Not at all. Simply put, Nintendo doesn't want to sully their reputation, so they're not going to put out a wartime themed game during a actual freaking hot war that's going on. They can ignore other social politics, like Peach being a badass, but they cannot ignore this. That's what I'm trying to say here. That is what fascinates me and got my attention towards the game. Now, we are nearing this game's release, but unfortunately, the conflict's still raging on with no end in sight. But I don't really want to be a Debbie Downer for longer than I should, so I shall stick to video games. When this game releases, I shall give you a proper review of it. Perhaps by then the horrible war will be done with? Who knows? All I hope is that it will provide many, including myself, some amounts of happiness in this trying time. But that's what I think about this game. Are you guys anticipated for this game? Let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you like this video. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye!